Alrighty, and we're on. So I'm here with Rodney Ellis today of Southern Cross Jiu-Jitsu. You can see the beautiful Southern Cross Jiu-Jitsu Academy logo in the background, and we're here in Cronulla. And I was saying to Rod before when I got here that many years ago I used to work at Turner Motor Corporation, which is just around the corner. I was like, oh, how long have you been here? Because if I'd known you were here at the time, I probably would have, tried to drop in and do some classes and things like that. But, the timing didn't quite cross over. I think I left Toyota in about 2011 and you started here in about 2012, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So for people that don't know Rod, Rod is obviously, I think you're a fourth degree? Fourth degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And part of the reasons, I love talking to people, from the martial arts world, because we're full of stories. and I'm sure you've probably got plenty of stories, because when you started jiu-jitsu, it was like the very early days of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So just maybe hold that mic, because it's hard. Sometimes it can be hard to hear. So, so I guess, tell us first of all, Rod, how many years have you been training now?
Oh, God. Probably 30, actually.
30 years.
I probably started when I was in high school, so that's 1990. So, yeah, 32 years.
32 years. And I guess, okay, let's actually wind it all the way back.
Oh, God.
All right?
Yep.
So you were born in the Shire?
Yep, just up the road.
Just up the road. So you lived in Cronulla for pretty much most of your life, right?
Didn't actually live in Cronulla, lived South Hurstville, but close enough.
Okay, yep. And so schooling-wise, what primary school did you go to?
Connells Point Public.
Connells Point Public. They're still around today.
It's still there.
Okay, and I guess, for you as a kid, like how would you describe yourself as a kid? Like, what kind of a kid were you?
Very shy, very introverted, more into gadgets and computers than anything. I was into sport, but I wasn't any good at sport, so I was always leaning more towards computers. But yeah, I enjoyed sport, but wasn't a natural at it.
Yep.
I had to work at it.
Okay, and then like what was so in your household? How many people were in your household?
Mum, dad, myself, my sister.
Yep. Okay, so mum, dad, yourself, and your sister. And were you older or younger?
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest.
Yeah.
Okay, so for as the oldest child, like what's the age gap between you and your sister?
2 years.
2 years. So you probably even with only a 2 year age gap, you probably can't even remember before she was on the scene, right?
No,
like it's one of those things.
One of those things.
It's so close that you pretty much always remember having her around.
Yep.
Right. What was the family dynamic like at home?
Yeah, mate, we're fine. Like just a normal, I guess, everyday Aussie family back in the day. Just mum, dad, 2 kids.
Yep. Yep. Nah, so relax. Yeah, I always, it's one of those things that people, as soon as the camera's going or the microphone's there, people always get a little bit uptight. And so I just, tell you, it's all right. Just chill out. It's like being in topside, right?
Yeah.
You're there now. You've done the hard work. You passed. Yeah. So, okay. So I guess, for me, so I grew up I'm an 80s kid, so I was born in 84. I lived out west in St. Clair for the first 10 years of my life. And so I was a cul-de-sac kid.
Okay.
We were the first house at the start of a cul-de-sac. And I do remember, obviously playing with the kids in the cul-de-sac. I have a memory of having, I don't think it was bullying per se, but it was just like kids being kids. Like I did have an experience where, I think when I was on my push bike or something, one of the kids wanted to sort of, have a go at me or something like that. But I also remember, a few of the stacks, a few of the falls and, grazing up on my knees and elbows. Like, was that the same sort of childhood for you?
Kind of. I mean, I grew up not on a cul-de-sac, but my best friend when I was growing up was a guy called Hugh.
Yep.
And Hugh, he used to come around. We used to be in the same footy team, same cricket team. And then once we left primary school, went to different high schools. And I think he was 12 or 13 when he was killed.
Oh, wow.
Just got into the wrong circle, started taking drugs, and had a profound effect on me.
Wait, so, okay. So
I've never taken drugs as a result. I've never taken marijuana, never taken a line of cocaine.
Yep.
All because of Hugh.
Yeah.
Kind of taught me that lesson early in life.
Wow. So, okay. But at 12, 13 to get into those circles is quite young. Like, that's basically the start of high school.
Yeah.
Right?
He changed. It was almost overnight. Just with the wrong crowd, just took him away. It was scary.
Yeah. So, I do have a friend who had a similar experience, and we were very close in high school, and he was actually really into Taekwondo.
Yeah.
And he was a national champ, I think for like Australian junior national champ, whatever, was training for the Olympics. And at one point on our snow trip to Canberra in year 10, we're all having a snow fight, like usual stuff kids do when you go to the snow. But I think somebody's thrown a chunk of ice.
Yeah.
And out of all things to happen, that chunk of ice actually glanced his eye, so it cut his eye, and the actual eyeball. And so he had to wear an eye patch for the rest of the trip, and his depth perception was off. But then when he went to see the specialist when we got back home, the ophthalmologist or whatever was like, you can't do any contact sports if you want to have another functioning eye. Like if you let it rest and you let it heal, you'll probably get it back to 97, 99%. If you get hit or have some more eye trauma, you might be blind in that eye.
Yeah.
And that basically crushed his Olympic dream. And as a result of that, he sort of went a similar way. He started getting into some of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so he got expelled from school and went to a different school, and I sort of lost a bit of contact with him after that. Like I think he might be okay now, and look, I think about him from time to time because obviously we're really close as we were growing up.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that that freak accident.
Yeah.
Just like
Hugh wasn't killed by drugs. He was out riding a skateboard on King George's Road at 2 in the morning.
And then what happened?
Hit by a truck.
Hit by a truck.
Cool.
Wow. Was he on drugs at the time?
He was hit the circle. He was probably high.
Yeah.
Just scary.
Yep. And one of the things I think about, when you're that young and you're exposed to the loss of somebody, right? It obviously has a bit of an impact. I think you sort of start to realize that, hey, you're not here forever.
No.
Yeah. Do you remember, like, I guess when you were told the news, like, what was your thought process?
Oh, so long ago, I was just sad, just crying.
Yep. Yeah. It's a tough one, right? Like I had a friend in primary school who went to the same high school as me. His name was Julian Sinclair. He had a heart problem, and he passed away when we were in the early years of high school.
Wow.
And I remember when like I think I'd called his house, and his mum picked up the phone, and she was the one that told me because I was calling him about some game or something that we were playing at the time.
Okay.
And when she told me, I just remember like I hung up the portable phone and I was sitting on like this little, we got these 2 little stairs because it's a split level house, and I was sitting on the stairs just thinking, wow, like he's gone.
Yeah.
Right. So when it then because that had such a profound impact, and obviously that meant you never really wanted to get into drugs and all that sort of stuff. What did you then find, were your interests and hobbies? Like, what were the things that you're into?
I was more the traditional Aussie kid, like cricket in summer,
Yep.
rugby in winter. Like I said, like as much as I played rugby and enjoyed it, I was never any good at it. One thing I'm always proud of is the fact that I never really quit.
Yep.
Jiu-jitsu, when I was going to jiu-jitsu at the age of 12 or 13, I started at Sylvania. My instructor, Gordon, at the time, one of those guys, it was like an old traditional jiu-jitsu school, like a lot close to Aikido, but Gordon taught us a lot of judo, some karate katas, and we'd go in tournaments up and down the coast or the Gold Coast or whatever. He'd drive us around, being 4 or 5, teenage boys. We'd go in tournaments. And, I lost every tournament in the first round.
Wow. So was that point fighting or continuous
Point
sparring?
fighting. So I kind of mix of karate. It's called sports jiu-jitsu. It's still around today.
Yep.
So you wear obviously gis, punch, kick,
Yep.
throw. Once it hits the ground, it's more like Kosen judo.
Yep.
But yeah, I remember I think 4 or 5 years without winning a fight.
Wow.
So I just keep at it.
So okay, let's talk about that a little bit more, right? So my first competitive amateur outing was in a pancration comp.
Yep.
So pancration is there's wrestling, there's grappling, no hits to the head, but you can punch and kick to the body and the legs. And I always talk about this because I think it had a profound impact in terms of how I approached martial arts, and I think it was a negative impact because I won my first fight, and the way that I won, like I was winning the stand up. I didn't really have a problem with the striking because of the kung fu and the karate background. But what happened was I think the guy's tied up, and I managed to do a koshiguruma hip throw, and I had him in a bulldog choke, and he tapped to the bulldog choke. Landed topside, keisakatami kind of a thing. wasn't anything as technical as how I made it sound by using the proper language just then, right? Like literally, it was like we were scrapping, and here we go, and I've tied him up, and I've just squeezed for dear life.
I understand what you mean,
right?
Yep.
And he's tapped, right? And I think, you know, for me, why that had such a negative impact because it didn't challenge any of my beliefs. It made me think that, hey, I could get away with doing what I was doing and win. Right, and so subsequently, when I did lose, I lost my next match that day by points because I got taken down and I couldn't get out from basically. I managed to get the guy into my guard, but I didn't do anything from guard. And so, you know, but the problem is that even that didn't realign my perspective. It was like, you know, I can just keep doing what I'm doing and it'll be fine. Like I never really thought that to challenge myself and go and challenge those beliefs and go and test myself with those ground fighting arts until later in my martial arts career, right? So, you know, for you experiencing a lot of losses up front, like that's a big ego hit. Yeah. Like, what made you want to keep coming back?
I think I enjoyed jiu-jitsu, and I had the right instructor like Gordon. Just knew how to mentor someone, you know, so just the desire, I guess. It's like you've got to want to do something.
Yeah.
To you know, fast forward a few years, like when I was at school, I did French for 5-6 years, and I could barely speak a word of it. But my first trip to Rio, my mate Eduardo's talking to me in English and all these hot, pretty girls in Portuguese.
Yeah.
Guess what? I wanted to learn Portuguese. So if you have a desire to learn something and you really want to learn it, you'll keep at it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's that simple.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common in a lot of kids, right? Like, I don't know what your teachers used to say about you, but you can tell me in a second. But my teachers used to say I was the kid that, you know, had ADD. You know, they wanted to tell my parents. They told my parents, "Are you feeding him red cordial? You're giving him sugar. You need to get this kid on Ritalin." And it was like, you know, I think you have an attention deficit disorder to things that you probably don't enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Right.
And say if you don't want to learn, or you know, like for me, I would have been much happier doing just mathematics, physics, chemistry, things like that. But you have to choose different subjects. And to fill in the subject, I chose French. I don't know why. I just chose French. So, yeah, until you actually want to learn it and to do it, you don't really give it your whole attention.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so in the early days, so the style of jiu-jitsu you're doing was, I think, Goshin...
Koshin-ryu, it's called these days.
Koshin-ryu. Okay. And so that's a more Japanese-based style of jiu-jitsu. So a combination of karate, judo,
Aikido, wrestling, judo. Yeah.
Yep. And then, so, you know, after you've gone through and you've lost a series of these fights, like what were your coaches saying to you? Were they like, you know,
just encouraging me, like just say it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's all just learning and experience and, you know, growing and for the next one.
Yep.
No, it was obviously disheartening, but I wouldn't change it.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think those things are very good. When you can take your losses and own them, like that's actually where the power is. Like you actually grow from that.
Yeah.
It's when you take your losses and then you go, no, I shouldn't have lost that. Or, you know, like you don't really face up to you don't confront the fact that you lost.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, you know, if many people watch back, you know, their match footage, but I think the guys that improve at the fastest rate are the ones that always go back and review what they did, you know. Obviously back then it was pretty hard to, because you don't have phones like you do today. Like nowadays, you know, you got phones, you can record everything, right? Like, so, I think, you know, one of the girls at the gym where I train, you know, she did a couple of comps and then she sent me her footage and I was like, okay, I'll clip it up for her. Because like I do this fight commentary thing on the side, so I clipped it up for her and I just was trying to show her some of the things, like the mistakes that, not to say necessarily a mistake, but it's just like, you know, a technical flaw, right? Yeah. You know, where the technique, the idea was right, but because the hand positioning was off or the grip was off, that's why it didn't work. Or so some of those things, because I think, you know, it's always in the heat of the moment. You don't really think about those things, right? Like you're just trying to go, you're trying to get on top, or you're trying to chase a sub. And I think, you know, like a lot of the times we get into the scramble and then we don't realize that, hey, we've given up the underhook. That's why we always end up on bottom, right? When it's something so simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, in terms of instruction, like you mentioned Gordon was a great teacher. Like what was his style of teaching? Like why do you think he was such a great teacher or a great influence for you?
Good question, that one. He was just, I mean, firstly, he didn't do it for money. He did it because he wanted to teach. And he just, I don't know, just knew how to keep you at it. Like when I needed to be kicked up the bum, he kicked me up the bum and say, put your head in, train.
Yeah.
If when I lost, he'd put my arm around me and say, don't worry about it, we'll improve.
Yeah.
It's just knew how to say the right things at the right time.
Yep. And I guess, you know, for people listening and who are into martial arts, I'm curious, you know, what was the class structure like back then? So, like, how can you describe what were the activities you would do?
Very similar, like if you'd see, you know, a normal karate style where we'd start off, you know, doing kata.
Yep.
And then Gordon was big on weapons, so we'd do a lot of knife defense, stick defense, that kind of stuff. Someone come with, you know, a bow or the knife and defending that. A lot of stuff you see in the Steven Seagal movies, the Kata Gosh, those kind of positions. We did a lot of those things. And then you into judo, like, you know, take hold, just your basic judo throws, pins. Not as technically obvious as we do them now, but, you know, all those basic throws, Gordon really made us learn those really well. A lot of my judo, I kind of learnt from Gordon.
Yep. Okay. And so then, you know, I always ask this question because I'm always curious about it because, you know, it seems like there's a massive expectation on kids nowadays to know what you're doing when you finish high school, right? And, you know, I think the large proportion of people that I talk to never actually know exactly what they want to do. But, you know, I guess for you, did you know what you wanted to do leaving high school?
Yeah, I knew probably halfway through high school I was going to be a computer programmer.
Computer programmer.
Yeah.
And so
simple. It was like I was always in a computer. So if you remember, like, I don't know yourself, probably being a few years younger, but you had the 3 1/4 floppy disks and stuff. You play games.
These
I was
are
one. I'd go home and I'd copy them.
Yep.
And distribute them. So I was always the kid that would do the games. And I was writing code in my, when I was 13 or 14 years old, I was actually writing my first software.
Wow.
So that's what I said before, like I would happily be doing computer programming, mathematics and computing study, you know, physics, those kind of subjects, not English, not French, not history, you know, those things I hated. So I knew straight away it was always going to be something in IT.
Yep. Okay. And so then you went to, did you go to uni or you went into like...
I was meant to get they predict your TER and what you're going to get.
Yep.
What they predicted and what I got were two different numbers and just went and got a job on a help desk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm glad because I didn't have any HECS debt.
Yep.
I was earning money when I was 18.
Yep.
By the time I was 21, I was earning over $100,000 a year.
Yeah, wow.
Programming. So jiu-jitsu has cost me probably don't know how many thousands of dollars. It's such a sidetrack from where my IT career could have taken me in and stuff. So for all the good jiu-jitsu, it's given me the financial burden is the other side of it, the flip side.
You know, okay, let's go into this a little bit more, right? Because I think there's two schools of thought here when it comes to the cost of jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
So jiu-jitsu is obviously inherently, I would say, on the pricier end in terms of what people could do.
Correct.
And part of the reason is because I think, you know, if for anything to grow and to have opportunities for growth, it needs to obviously be able to allow people to survive.
Yep.
Right? And so, you know, and the contrast for this is the opposite. Like, let's say a traditional style of martial arts where a lot of the times it wasn't about money.
Yep.
Right? And that was...
For Gordon, same thing. Like,
yep.
My dad used to give him money to drive us to the Gold Coast, and Gordon wouldn't accept it.
Yeah.
Like he's driving us for 12 hours, and goes, I don't want the money. I'm happy to do it.
Yep.
Don't see many instructors like that these days.
Yeah. And so, like, that was the similar mindset of my my godfather, my kung fu master. You know, it wasn't really about money. It was more like a passion, a hobby. And you know, there's greatness in both sides or in both aspects, right? Like, there's something beautiful about not doing something for money but for love.
Yeah.
Right? But there's also a benefit to doing something where it can actually provide you with a living as well.
Yep.
right? And this is where, I find it interesting because it's so difficult to find that happy ground between the two.
Yeah.
Right. And me personally, I struggle with it. Like, it's one of the reasons why I haven't gone deep into, martial arts teaching and things like that, is because there's a part of me that still has that indoctrination of, you should be doing it for the love of it, that you want to spread the art, that you want to develop people, not just for the money. But then, the realist in me is like, well, you need money too, right? Like, you got 3 mouths, family of 5, you got these kids to feed. You can't do it for free.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So it's
a hard balance. It is hard. Yeah.
So I guess, like for you, you've obviously had the experience with both as well. Like, how did you sort of work out or rationalize it for yourself to go and say, okay, I do need to be able to make a living. Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, but I'm still passionate and I still do this for the love of it.
Yeah. So my main coach over the longest time is Larry Papadopoulos.
Yes.
So Larry can be the most underrated martial artist in Australia, I personally believe. He's phenomenal amount of knowledge. If Larry had a gym in the Southern Shire, I'd be working at his gym.
Yep.
But because his gym's based in the CBD and was 15 years ago when I decided to move back to Australia full time and obviously start a family and so forth, I wasn't going to keep traveling to the city and stuff like that. So I needed the gym down here. So that's why I used the name Southern Cross, because that was Gordon's school name. Yep. And that's why I started Southern Cross.
Yep.
It wasn't because I wanted to start a martial arts school. It's like, no, I want to train. I want to keep fighting. I want to keep growing. I want to, obviously teach my kids one day, so I need a school. So there's nothing down here. I'll start one. And I had the first full-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu centre in the Southern Shire.
Okay. So Larry, for people that don't know, he runs Boxing Works.
Yep.
Larry was actually at my first pancration fight. He was there. He had a fighter there. I can't remember the fighter's name, but somebody in a different weight category. But Larry was there. Met Larry that day. I don't really know Larry very well, but I know the name and I know the gym. So what you mentioned Gordon. So the school was originally called Southern Cross
Goshin Ryu Jiu-Jitsu.
Goshin Ryu Jiu-Jitsu.
Jiu-Jitsu spelled without the first I.
Yeah. And so Gordon's passed on?
No, he's still alive. He's still in his 80s, but he's still around.
Yeah, still training.
Still training. He keeps for 20 years. He keeps saying, "This is my last year," and he won't.
I think it's actually good. Like, you need to have something that keeps you active, right?
That's it.
And look, for the longest part for me, right? Like, so I had a career in the automotive industry as well, and so like I was always like, martial arts would be like my retirement job. Yeah. Right? Like, that's the way how my mindset was before.
Just a Miyagi type thing.
Yeah. Like, it'll be something that I do when, I've had enough of the automotive industry and I'll transition into martial arts, and it gives me something to do. And then, like I no longer work in auto through some circumstances, but, I'm basically out of the industry at the moment. And, I've been debating, do I get back into it? Do I not? And then I thought, if I can forge a new pathway, that's what I'm trying to do now. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, auto's been great for me. And look, I think auto was doing a lot, I'm so grateful for my career in auto, but I also, realized how much I was missing out on with my kids and things like that. And that's why it's like, okay, I need to try and find a different pathway to, be able to make a living at the same time as balancing the family and things like that. Yeah. So, for you in the IT field, so you started on the help desk, and so was like customer service on the phones?
Yep.
Sorry, I just for those of you who are listening or watching, like I've got my daughter here, and so she was making some noises, and I just thought I better check on her. But she seems
very well behaved
so far.
My kids at that age would have been making a lot more noise.
She's fixated. So you started on the phones, would have been?
Yeah, on the phones back in. Yeah, on it's like, for those who understand anything about it was actually things called AS400s. If I get it out eventually, they're like mid-range computers. Okay, so they're not your big mainframes you have at the bank, and they're not obviously anything what we've got today. They're like a mid-range, so it's still a big sized box. Yep. And the things that connect to them had green screens. Yep. So I had to go around under desks and connect these green screens and old dot matrix printers, stuff like that. Yep. And then while I was doing that, when I didn't none of those to do, then I was being trained in coding.
Okay. And what language were you coding in?
COBOL.
Cobalt. Okay. Is that still around nowadays?
COBOL and RPG.
Okay.
So they're around, but
It's not common
they're
now.
not common. And they're not fun. I don't ever want to do it again.
Fair enough.
It's the old stuff we had to like code in with carrots in the right columns.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Okay. That sounds very. What's the right word for it? Debilitating.
yeah. Yeah.
So then, okay. So and at the same time, obviously, you were still training jiu-jitsu, right?
Yep. So so that job was in Botany. Larry's gym was in the city. So I'd leave home, go to Botany, work, and then go train at Larry's at night.
Yep. Okay. And then, what made you then decide, hey, I'm going to go overseas?
So at Larry's there was a guy called Eduardo Duarte,
Okay.
and we're about the same age. And I think because I never really had many friends at school, I didn't really hang out with anyone once I left school. Eduardo and I were the same age, as I said, and we became really good mates.
Yep.
And what was that, 1998?
Yep.
Would have been. And he said, no, I'm going back to Rio for because he was living here. He was one of the first Australians to.
We're talking about Eduardo, right?
Yeah. So Eduardo was the first, I think, Brazilian that we know of teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Australia. I was walking past Larry's gym, saw the sign, and came in and introduced himself. And he was a purple belt at the time. And we just started training and just started hanging out on the weekends and stuff. And then he wanted to go back to Rio for a few weeks, see his family, and he just invited a few of us to go along, to go back with him. So
Yep.
yeah, so in 1998, I was almost 20. I was 19 and a half or so.
Yep.
And my first trip to Brazil. First trip overseas without mum and dad.
Oh, so how was that?
And it was like I said before, like I didn't speak any Portuguese. So everywhere he went, I was kind of like his shadow.
Yep.
Just experiencing for the first time, like the beach, the food.
The music.
Just the training, the humidity. It's different. It's just a different environment.
Yeah. So I guess I've never been to Rio. Like I guess back then, I don't even know what it would be like. As a comparison, right? But I guess people always talk about there's obviously some very poor areas in the city. I don't know if you got to go past any of those or.
You driving from the airport to downtown Rio, you drive through some very poor areas. Yeah, it's quite sad in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then I guess in terms of like they always talk about the lifestyle, right? Is sort of like it's jiu-jitsu and surfing. Is that what you experienced or?
I can't surf.
Yep.
It's embarrassing that is.
What? You're in the Shire and you can't surf.
I know. I've got.
All right. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I mean, I can body surf and obviously swim, those kind of things. But yeah, I remember we were on this beach in Cabo de Frio, which is up the north of Rio State, and a Brazilian gave me a surfboard because they were going surfing. I'm like, my back is sore.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm not surfing. I'm going to fool myself. Now, for me, it wasn't so much jiu-jitsu and surfing. It's more jiu-jitsu and nightlife.
Yep. Yep. And the nightlife would have been pretty good there, right?
It's so much better than here.
Yeah.
So much better.
So then, okay. How long were you in Rio for that time?
That time was only 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay. So then you came back and you just continued on with the career and jiu-jitsu?
So I actually got my blue belt on that trip, and
oh wow.
for those so about 2 weeks ago, last week, I think I posted on Facebook a photo where I got my blue belt.
Yep.
It was in Osvaldo Alves Academy.
Yep.
And he just passed away last week.
Oh.
Which is why it's so fresh in my memory, because I was looking at the old photos.
Yeah.
About 10 days ago. So
yep.
It was an interesting trip. Yeah.
And then training wise, like, was it very different to how we train over here, or?
Not the way I train over here, because I kind of model my gym on what it was like training there. So
yeah.
Just hard rounds like Fredson Paschal. He's black belt champion, but certainly very good. He was purple belt at the time. He actually went from purple straight to black. One of only 2 people to do that, both from Osvaldo. I met Eduardo's coach, Sedge, so he's a black belt from Osvaldo. Amaury Badecci was there. First I met Vitor Belfort. He was training there.
Was he jacked back then?
Oh, yeah. Because Osvaldo couldn't speak English, so Vitor Belfort did a lot of the translating.
Oh, okay.
Who else? I'm trying to think of the names. There's so many names from back there.
Yep.
Look at the photos. Sergio Pena. He's now in Las Vegas. Yeah.
So, okay, this is an interesting thing, right? Like, because you mentioned, you try and model the training and, it's, lots of hard rounds. I always find it interesting because every school has a different mentality, right? Like some schools, and I'll give you two examples from my own like personal examples, I guess. So I feel like at one of the places I train, it's very welcoming, very accommodating towards new people, and I think it's a great environment for people to get started and start their training journey and build themselves up, right? And another place where I train, and look, it's also depends on the classes, right? Like if you go into advanced classes versus beginner classes, there's a slightly different mindset, right? But another place where I train, it's like the mentality is kind of, well, we're here to sift out the ones who can't make the cut, right? And so it's like it can be quite cutthroat. Like I remember my first session there, I got winded a couple of times, and it was like, oh wow, this is rough.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was like what I realized, probably a week in or so, it's like, oh hey, it's a different mentality here because what they're doing is if you've trained before, then it's like, okay, well, we're going to give you our best because that's showing you respect. It's actually disrespectful if we just play around with you when you've got experience and things like that prior.
This is a spider approaching your daughter.
Right.
All happening here today.
Yeah. I was wondering what you were looking at.
I was trying to be subtle, but spider
I was like, what's going on? Anyway, all good. We got the spider. Yeah. So I always find it interesting. Like, what is the kind of mindset that you try and instill in the gym? Like for your guys here, how do you strike that balance?
It's changed dramatically over time.
Yep.
So
the early years would have been really hard, right?
Yeah, when I first started, when I opened the school full time in 2006, I was competing a lot, and obviously I wanted to win certain tournaments. So, and I was still training at Larry's, and also held down a 40-hour week day job and working as a bouncer. So I was doing all these things. So for me, teaching was about, I suppose, growing the gym, but also needed to train for my own competition. Now, as a father of a kids who aren't very sporty like I was, I've changed it a lot. I'm now more interested in teaching more the self-defense stuff that I learned, more teaching it about holistic jiu-jitsu. A lot of schools now are it's all about sport. It's all about rules. Back in the 90s, back in my day, to sound like an old man, we never trained jiu-jitsu for a competition rule set.
Yep.
You learnt jiu-jitsu to fight.
Yep.
And that's the biggest difference. When people ask what's the difference between like back then and now, I would never sit on my butt with my head up and my hands like this.
Yep.
Ever.
Yep. Pull and guard.
You get punched in the face.
Yeah.
The only time at Novi now we took our gi tops off was to train MMA. It was like Andre divided the mat. You got your jiu-jitsu and you got the guys fighting MMA.
Yep.
There was no real emphasis on submission wrestling and scooting like a dog with worms.
Yep.
Like you see these days. It's so for me, when I'm teaching now, especially like say white belts to purple belts, it's more about the mentality of the holistic jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, look, I think that's a good way to approach it because at the end of the day, I feel like let's go back one step because I sort of feel like...
Sorry, I jumped ahead a bit there.
Yeah, no. Like I just want to sort of discuss some of those points because I always feel like when it comes to sport-specific training, like the purpose of almost every martial art is the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like if it's boxing, the idea is that you want to knock the other person out. right? So if it's any sort of striking or stand-up art, you want to knock the other person out. If it's a submission art, then obviously you want to get the submission.
Yeah.
What changes the approach is the way the rules are structured.
Or the situation, yeah.
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 Right? So, as an example, in boxing, you can only use your fists, hence the style that is developed for boxing. Guys have different types of guard, whether it's the high guard, Philly guard, whatever it is. But they all are geared towards not expecting any leg kicks.
Yep.
They can duck their head nice and low, and they can weave really low to avoid punches and things like that. Whereas, in kickboxing, you'd never see that happen because, you duck your head like that a couple of times and next thing you know, you're eating a shin.
Yeah.
Right? So the rules are what sort of create the style,
Correct.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
And the way that I guess, the rule sets for jiu-jitsu are sort of gone, it does favour the guard pull. So, because you're not getting penalised for dropping to your butt, as soon as you get back up, it's 2 points, or the sweep or the reversal, whatever. So a lot of people, work on obviously then building up a really strong guard game as a result of it. And, I think it's fairly common. If you look at any white, blue, purple belt competition, you see a lot of guys pulling guard, right?
I actually know, so we've got a good judo program here, and one of my judo students was at an open mat somewhere, and he was telling me of a jiu-jitsu black belt that came up to him and asked him couldn't make a simple grip, didn't know how to do an ogoshi and a sotogari.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Yep.
You got black belts who don't know those basic positions, those basic throws. It's watering down
lacking.
the art. It's lacking, yeah.
Yeah. And look,
And Eddie Bravo, I think, as much as I've got respect for Eddie Bravo and the things he developed, giving out belts in no-gi, I've always been against that.
Yeah.
Being a black belt and not being able to, know the grips and that kind of stuff. It's a very good submission grappler, no doubt. But for me, the jiu-jitsu is more than just that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's become a separate art now.
I agree.
Like, so you sort of have to.
There's nothing wrong with it.
No.
It's just
it's a different art.
Jiu-jitsu is, in my opinion, a lot.
Yeah. So, and I think you almost have to delineate and say, okay, if you're purely getting belts for no-gi grappling, then that's it's a no-gi grappling recognition of your level.
Sport, yeah.
But it's not a recognition of your your level in the gi and vice versa, right? Like so, I'm much the same in the sense that because even though I've trained all these years, I'm only a blue belt, right? So I'm a blue belt in the gi because I've only had the gi on for 4 or 5 years. Forget about all the training beforehand. But that's the way that the cookie crumbles. And until, my coach, instructor decides, hey, you're ready for this or you're ready for that, you got to, it's the individual's journey. Doesn't matter how good you might be in whatever art, like it's still, you're getting awarded something. It's not like you do the work and you just automatically get it, or you can go and buy one. You got to be given it.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
You want what it represents.
Yeah. Right. So, you mentioned, you were working a 40-hour week. You're working security as well. So what were you doing? You just were bouncing on doors?
Yeah. Well, this comes back to what I mentioned like 20 minutes ago when I said that I was earning $100,000 a year when I was 21.
Yeah.
I was fortunate when I got into IT, or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it. It was in the late 1990s.
Yeah.
So you had the Y2K bug coming up.
Yep.
You had the GST was being introduced.
Yep.
And on top of that, there was the dot-com boom.
Yeah.
So between, say, the 1998, 97, 98 and 2001, I'll come back to that, there was this massive influx of work.
Yep.
And there wasn't enough real computer programmers to go around. So I got a sign-on bonus to stay at one company till after Y2K, and then I changed companies, went somewhere else. I was fortunate to work at the 2000 Olympic Games.
Wow.
And then in 2001, winter 2001, I was working at the Japanese Tourism Bureau as a contractor doing client-server programming. Yep. And that was when I first hit the 100K a year.
Yeah, wow.
I was 22 years old.
Okay. So what did you do for the Summer Games here in Australia?
That was great. So luckily, through connections with jiu-jitsu, I ended up being, I forget the actual term, it was a ground coordinator, something for IBM.
Yep.
Basically, I got paid good money to sit mat side at the judo and the wrestling to just watch the things. But if something went wrong with IBM, I had to move a few switches around. And I was involved a lot in testing.
Yep.
Testing of the software, the timing, the results. But basically for the 2 weeks of the games, I got pretty much paid just to sit there and watch the judo and the wrestling.
Nice.
And then party all night.
Yeah.
It was great.
So you're in the village, basically?
Not in the village, I was at Darling Harbour.
Okay.
So it was even better.
Oh,
So yeah, right at Darling Harbour. So I used to get in at 8 o'clock in the morning. We'd stay there, watch the judo and then the wrestling. And then once it finished, there was all those parties around Darling Harbour.
Yep.
And it was just on all night. And then somehow got back to work at 8 the next morning. And
Red-eyed.
I don't remember much of it at all, to be honest. It was just a blur. It was so great. I think I spent a week in bed sick after it.
Oh, wow.
It was just
The
last 2 days, I think we went 40, 50 hours without sleep. It
Wow.
was just a full-on, there was the closing ceremony.
Yep.
And there was they had to come back the next day and format all the computers,
Oh, wow. Okay.
clean out, put them in boxes. And then the IBM party was after that.
Yep.
And it was just this cascading event of just no sleep. Just
That's pretty cool.
yeah,
Like that would have been a really great experience.
it's fantastic. Yeah.
So you were working for IBM at the time.
Yeah.
Yep. And what were they like as a company? Like, I guess,
Like any large company that, they throw money at the wrong things, waste it on certain things. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It was so long ago.
Yep. No, fair enough. Okay. And then, so when you were doing, when you were bouncing and doing security, did you have any altercations, any notable stories that you should?
Well, I'll come back to how I ended up bouncing, because after the Y2, so 2001 when I was working at the Japanese Tourism Bureau, I wanted to then, I finished June, July, because I hate winter, I got cold, so I resigned from that, went back to Rio, and I remember I was lying in bed one morning with a hangover, and Eduardo messaged me and said, put on CNN. And I'm like, why? What would I just put it on? Because he was at work. And I watched the second plane hit the tower live.
Oh, wow.
So once September 11 happened, the .com market crashed.
Yep.
Companies, lost billions.
Mm.
So all these IT contractors, like I was, suddenly out of work.
Mm.
So I had this massive rise up quickly where there was too much work, and I could do 6-month contracts, go to Brazil, waste my money that I'd earned, and then come back after September 11. I couldn't get a job. And yeah, there was just no work. I was just, there was too many IT workers, not enough jobs. So I wanted to keep training jiu-jitsu. I could get a full-time job, but I didn't want a full-time job. I've always wanted to have exactly what I do now, which is I do IT consultancy. I can train and teach jiu-jitsu, but I don't have to be at work at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. So the only way I could make that work then was to get a job bouncing.
Yeah.
So when I got my security license, and I remember my first night bouncing at the Chinese Laundry, I was on King Street, at the back door, starting at 10 p.m, which is where you always put the new guy. And I remember looking up at the building where I was working at the JTB, the Japanese Tourism Bureau, and I was earning $22 an hour starting from 10 p.m, finishing at 4 a.m, when I was on more than double that a year earlier. Yeah. I'm thinking, how have I stuffed up?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big...
it was a big ego
hit.
Hit, but I needed it.
Yeah.
If I look, I wouldn't change it. I needed it. I was I don't have any of that money left. I spent it all, trips to Brazil, and it was all. It taught me the value of money. It taught me, lessons that I needed to learn.
I think we also attach a lot of who we are as a person to what we do for work as well, right? And like I've had to go through this because I was a dealer principal of a car dealership.
Yeah.
And hang on. So I was the dealer principal of the car dealership, and I was 17 years in that industry, right?
Yeah.
So you attach a lot of who you are as to what you do for work.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're no longer in the industry or the business, you know, like the phone stops ringing, you know, people don't need you as much, right? And then it's funny, you know, like when you're not needed, then you know you don't even deserve a hello. You're like it's sort of not, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It just means that, and I don't begrudge anyone for that, because it's how most people are. It's like, you know, you're out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Right. So then you have to, you know, obviously take a bit of time to actually start doing a bit of soul searching. And for you obviously realized, oh, yeah, I squandered my money. Like there's some lessons that I need to learn from this, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's always lessons that you can glean from those sorts of circumstances, right? And at the same time, it opens up other opportunities as well, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you're bouncing on these doors. You know, did you ever have to use your training?
I talk about it a lot in class, especially when someone comes in for the first time.
Yep.
You know, it's like when someone comes into my club for the first time, I ask them, I say, why do you want to learn jiu-jitsu? You know, and normally it's around self-defense, or they've heard someone say, you should try this, and then they don't know what it is. That's always the funny one. But for the person...
Yes. Yeah, you're okay. Keep going.
Yeah, for the person who wants to learn self-defense, I always say, like, you know, if I get into an altercation with someone, I don't want to punch you.
Yep.
Because if I land the perfect right cross or hook or something, and I knock you out, and your head hits the pavement, you die, I'm in jail.
Yep.
So I always want to win the fight without striking.
Yeah, that's right.
So my whole career on the nightclubs, I never threw a single punch.
Yep.
I'm proud of that. I was able to control them with jiu-jitsu. And coming back to what we were talking about before in terms of like gradings, as impossible as this is, I wish it was the law that when you got your purple belt, to go from purple to brown or to black, you had to do a year at nightclubs, because it would change the way you trained. You know, like when I first started, because Larry used to work.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, Larry did a lot of nightclub work, and I asked him, I said, how would you remove someone? How do you control someone and stuff in this kind of environment? And he showed me quite a few tricks and grips and things that I used to use a lot, like to control someone and move them around. And so, yeah, the way I guess you train when you know that you've got to go and work at a nightclub, it does change the way you train. Yeah. You wouldn't be pulling guard. Yep. You wouldn't be sitting up with your head up in the air. Yep. You need to be able to control someone without hitting them, control someone and still be able to look and make sure his mate's not going to come running at you with a beer bottle. Yep.
So what? Lots of Kimura grips and rear naked chokes.
No, I used to love working at establishment when a day after the races and all these drunk yuppies had come in wearing their best suits.
Yeah. Oh, even better. Grips on the jackets.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So then, what happened after that? So you've gone from working at the Japanese Tourism Bureau to being security opposite the street for half the pay, working nights. What happened after that?
It was like kind of like the noughties, you know, from 2001 after September 11 until I guess I got my black belt 2005 or 2000. Yeah, I think it was 2005. Like those years, predominantly I was working nightclubs and I was just training. Yeah, they were like my jiu-jitsu years. Yeah, put my IT career on hold. I did almost no IT work at all in that period of time. Yep. Competed a lot. I think at purple belt I would have had hundreds of matches at purple belt. Yep. And something for like the phone, the cameras and stuff. I got almost none of the footage of all the tournaments I went in. Yep. Both here and overseas. But I guess it's kind of how I learnt my game. Yep. My competition game, like my favourite throws, my favourite positions, probably all developed at purple belt. Yep.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really start to work out, what sort of style they want to play until, they get to that sort of level, right?
Yeah, you got to, I guess, learn all the positions from white to purple, and then the rest is your own journey. Yeah,
knowing what you actually enjoy.
Putting it all together and just, rounds on the mat.
Yep. No, fair enough. So then when you, because I think you did, you competed a lot from purple from purple and brown, right?
Heaps.
Yeah. What are some of the notable comps that you took out?
I don't know. Like, I don't really count anything other than black belt.
Oh,
Honestly,
true.
for myself, because if you win a purple belt match, well, great. There's browns and blacks.
Yeah, true.
So I think I won a state title at purple, and at brown. I won some comps in Brazil at purple.
Okay.
I was proud of that. Yeah. I won one at brown as well. But yeah, so I kind of remember that I had that many of them.
Yep.
Some I won the first. So I won. Some I lost in the first round.
Yep.
It's all learning to me for what came after that.
Yep. Okay. So then, when you got your black belt, then I guess first of all, like, what was the emotion that you felt when you got your black belt? Because it's obviously the culmination of quite a long journey, right?
Yeah. So I think it was my 6th trip to Brazil. So it was a lot of travel back and forth. But I was the 11th Australian to get a black belt.
Yep.
And because there was no YouTube maybe in its infancy, but we didn't have access to it like we did today. There was VHS cassettes you could learn off, but we had to travel. I did a lot of time traveling down to Melbourne to learn off John Donoghue.
Okay.
I think without doubt, John Donoghue is probably the best grappling coach in Australia technically.
Yep.
No one that I've trained with comes close to John.
Okay.
And yeah, the training on Andre Pederneiras' gym in Rio was just incredible.
Yep.
So to get the black belt, it was more. I don't know how to explain it. It was just an achievement that I was proud of. I'm still proud of because of how I did it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's because it is an individual's journey. It's one of those things that really represents the combination of a lot of time and a lot of effort, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I always, I say I got my black from Andre, but also try and credit, Larry, Gordon, Serge, Eduardo, all the people that helped me as well. It wasn't, Shaolin, Vitor Shaolin was probably, for the last, from brown to black, Vitor Shaolin was probably my main coach.
Oh, wow. Come here. Yeah. Can you not spill it everywhere? That's what I'm worried about. That's bound to happen.
Yeah.
She'll probably drink this whole bottle, by the way.
She can do that.
Oh. So then, what then? When throughout the jiu-jitsu time, when did you start getting interested in doing some MMA?
Well, that was probably earlier than jiu-jitsu. Like, so I took up jiu-jitsu to learn to fight.
Yep.
And Larry was fighting shooto and Pancras when I met him, like in the mid-1990s, and he had Bus Rutten over, I think 96, 97. Alex Cook was back at the gym then. So Larry's gym back then, it was a fighting gym. It wasn't a sport grappling gym so much. So when I started training with Larry, I always wanted to fight Pancras or shooto or not so much UFC. That was still very early on then.
Yep.
So that was always kind of the goal, more so than jiu-jitsu or jiu-jitsu black belt.
Yep. Okay.
So the thing is, I never retired from MMA. Like, I had the one fight in 2001 in Japan, and then I always wanted to fight again. I had a second fight, I think, booked, but I hurt my knee or shoulder, had to pull out of that. Trained as part of the Novinal pro team, so there was Jose Aldo when he was coming through. Vitor Shaolin was then fighting in shooto, and Talis Leites, and these guys. And Andre Penes offered me a fight, but I turned it down simply because I think I'd overstayed my visa by this point.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if my insurance would cover me
it
if I got hurt in a professional fight.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about blood work, and there was just too many doubts.
Yeah.
So I declined that, and I told Dad that I just focused on jiu-jitsu tournaments, and he was okay with that.
Yeah.
And then when I moved back and started, I was, teaching and training and doing other things, I just never really got the time to go to Larry and say, yeah, I'm ready for another fight.
Yep.
I thought I'll do ADCC first, or I'll do this jiu-jitsu tournament first, and then talk to Larry about having another fight. But it just kept getting put back. So I guess that I'm 44 now, so I'm not going to do it again.
Yeah,
I never actually said, so I'll never fight again. I always wanted one or two more. I wanted to at least go down a win, but just the way it happened.
Yeah. So okay, let's so in terms of shooto, right? So you went to Japan for that.
Yep.
Tell me about that. Like, what was that whole experience like?
So I didn't know I was fighting until the week before. So we were kind of like all training at Boxing Works.
Yeah, you're so happy now.
Sorry. And so one of my best friends, Rhett, he was booked to fight, and Rhett and I, we were training together. We were about the same size, weight, all those kind of things. And Rhett got injured a week before it.
Wow.
And Larry's like, well, what are we going to do? And then Alex Cook said, well, send Rod. And Larry's like, what are you doing on the weekend? Nothing. All right. Go get your blood work. And my passport it was like about to expire.
Yeah.
You know, like if you can't travel, if it's like 6
months.
Yeah. So I had to go get that renewed. There was all these things I quickly had to do.
Yeah.
Larry was off to ADCC.
Yeah. So
it was the same weekend as that year. So I was in Japan by myself on Friday.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing, yeah.
So you didn't have anyone in your corner?
No. Had I called Eugene Heinz, I think his name is, a Kiwi guy, same kind of thing. He ended up in the same card. So, you know, Australian New Zealand connection. We just met and we cornered each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what was the audience like? The atmosphere in the venue like?
I can't remember that much. It was so long ago. It was 21, 22 years ago. But it's just what you see, like just, you know, the quietness and the respect.
It's a very different crowd, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because I've been to Vale Tudo shows in Brazil, like a Vale Tudo show in Brazil starts at midnight.
What?
It's insane. Yeah.
Okay.
Starts at midnight, goes to like 5 in the morning. The one I went to was put on by Carlson Gracie, and yeah, he entered the ring at 2 in the morning to give a speech and stuff. It's just crazy.
Well, and what did he say when
I've
he
got no idea. I couldn't understand what he
okay.
was saying back then. Especially like in the middle of a spark, it's all noisy and stuff.
Yeah.
So Japan was the opposite of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very different culture, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
But it really well looked after.
Yeah.
Because I would have loved to have gone back with proper training and preparation, and but it just never happened.
Yeah, it's hard if you're just filling in. Essentially, it's one of those things that great opportunity and Japan.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the watching the Vale Tudo.
Yeah.
In Brazil. So that would have been a pretty cool experience, right?
That was cool, yeah. Like trying to stay awake till 5 in the morning to watch fights. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy that like that's the way that they would do it, I guess. But the lifestyle for nightlife is obviously very different there, right?
It
like,
is, yeah.
Do people sleep in the afternoons there, like a siesta, like in Spain?
Not as formal as in Spain. Like it's just things just started later. Yeah. So here. Normally, you start work 8, 9 o'clock in the morning for a desk job. I actually had a brief period where I was working as a computer programmer in Rio.
Wow.
And I'd start 10:30 in the morning.
Yep. And then, okay, I'm curious about that, right? Like, so working in Brazil or Rio, right? Like, it would have been a very different culture, right?
Yeah.
How did you find it? Like,
oh, cool. So I worked for a guy who had not kind of startup, but a consultancy, and he was really smart. He was from California. He was an American dad, Brazilian mum, so he had dual nationality.
Yep.
And he had a client in New York.
Yep.
So he moved to Rio to spend real and earn US dollars.
Yep.
So it was a pretty sweet gig for him. Yeah. So I was, it was essentially like working in a US company. Obviously, we spoke English.
Yep.
And a couple of Brazilians that worked for him as well. They spoke really good English because the clients were in the United States. So that kind of culture wasn't any different to anything else. It was just it started later.
Yeah. Okay. And then finished later, or
yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And training jiu-jitsu, the class started at 8 o'clock at night.
Yep.
Or 9 o'clock at night. So it was just a few hours later.
Yep. Okay. And then, all right. So, like, okay. So when you then came back, so hang on, let me just try and piece back together the timeline. So after the shooto fight, you came back. What were you doing then? Like, so
that was when I went back to bouncing.
Went back to bouncing.
Yeah, I kind of started bouncing. Yeah.
Yep.
So I had the shooto fight. Then I was still working for NIT for the Japanese Travel Bureau.
Yep.
Then I went to Brazil. September 11 happened, and then when I came back was when I couldn't get an IT job. So
yep,
I was off to bouncing.
Yep. So how many years did you do that for?
All up, probably 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, wow.
But I did it full time for probably 5.
Yep.
Between 2001 to 2006 when I was in Australia.
Yep.
It was great because it's the kind of industry where it's all casual. So I could get back from Brazil on, say, Tuesday, ring up the licensee and say I'm back, and he's like, oh, good, I'll see you Friday night.
Yeah.
Whereas in IT, to do that, you just can't.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, why I did it for so long.
Yeah. So you appreciated the flexibility so that you could obviously piece together the lifestyle, have train the way that you wanted.
Jiu-Jitsu was my focus for that period of time. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And then, so did you end up going back into IT?
Yeah.
Or?
So now, my wife says it's the happiest I've ever been because I've hit that goal that I've always had. I've always wanted to have an IT business / consultancy. Well, not always. Ever since I started this business.
Yep.
To have the IT consultancy and the jiu-jitsu business.
Yep.
Without having to be somewhere at 9 o'clock on Monday morning.
Yep.
So now I do that. I've got a couple of clients that I do consultancy for.
Yep.
Roughly 40 hours a week.
Yep.
But I choose the 40 hours.
Yep. So, okay, I'm curious about this because, I'm trying to work out how to piece my life together as well.
Yeah.
It's something that's been coming up in my household is because, so technically I'm the stay-at-home dad at the moment. My wife has got a part-time job that she'll work. And, I'm doing the school runs in the morning, the preparation of the kids and all that sort of stuff. And,
Sorry to interrupt. This is actually the first time in my life I've actually been able to do that.
Okay.
So it is, it's so worth it.
Yeah.
If you can find the right way to do, like I dropped my kids off this morning,
Yep.
on the way to here, and I might pick them up, my wife might pick them up. We've got that option.
Yeah. So yeah, this is exactly what I'm trying to get myself to at the present moment, right? So, coming out of the career in auto, it's like, all of those jobs in auto would require me to be there full time, blah, blah, blah. So at the moment, I've got a pretty great lifestyle in the sense that, aside from the morning rush, and today we were late this morning and, rushing the kids off to school and all that. Typically, I'll then train, get my kickboxing done mid-morning, and then come back, put Eden down for a nap, wake up in the afternoon, or she'll wake up in the afternoon. I'll try and do a bit of work, and depends on the day. Sometimes it's if you've had a rough night, then you have a bit of a snooze. But
No days.
But I'll do, I guess, my work, so to speak. So my YouTube stuff when she's napping, because that's the weird thing is like, me trying to do all this content and things like that. A lot of the times I can't do that when the kids are around.
Yeah.
It's just too difficult. And then sometimes if I'm doing like recordings for voiceovers and that sort of stuff, obviously I can't do that when the kids are around because it's too noisy.
Yep.
So it's created this weird sort of tension, in my household at the moment. It's because like, as soon as the kids go to sleep at night, I want to go and work on my things. And, I need to obviously get this balance right because I had an unhappy wife last night who was like, oh, I can spend time with you now. I'm like,
you want to say this publicly on this podcast?
Yeah, look, it's okay because she listens to it, right? And it's, this is, because it's good because it allows me to sort of elocute how I'm thinking about it because like, I've got this window here where I can push this stuff, push this content, try and work on developing some of these other things so that, potentially if I am moving out of auto and into something else, well, this could be that something else, right? And I find that interesting because like I'm only early days, not to say early days in the journey. I've been podcasting for almost, I'll be coming up to 19, 20, 21, 22. It'll be 4 years at the end of this year.
Congrats.
Yeah. And like, I'm 60 something episodes deep. And so it gets easier and easier because, there comes a point where the body of work speaks for itself.
Yes.
I think, when you're starting out in podcasting, a lot of guys, and girls, they probably give up after, 5 or 10 episodes.
People giving up.
Yeah.
I was saying before, like you got to be that person who just does not quit.
Yeah.
All the setbacks, just keep going.
Yeah. But once you get to like, I think once you get to say 50 episodes, people then actually go, oh, you are a podcaster because you actually have got a body of work behind you. Versus somebody who goes, oh, I'm a podcaster, or I've got 5 episodes. Like, it just sounds different, right?
Yeah.
So part of, I guess one of the things that I keep reminding myself is that, there comes a point where your body of work speaks for itself. And so all I need to do is just, keep doing creating, keep putting out the content. And at some point, the body of work will speak for itself.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's ways that you can obviously speed it up if you're a good marketer and you're good at social media and those sorts of things. I'm not really great at either of those things from that perspective, and it's not for any other reason than I feel like once I I'd rather focus with the limited time that I have. I'd rather focus on creating the content itself.
Yes.
So doing the podcasts, creating my film studies. I like to do that.
Yep.
Rather than spend my time trying to then market it.
Yes.
You know, because let's say as an example, and my goal at the present moment is to do a podcast a week, so upload a new episode every week, and to do a martial arts film study each week.
Okay.
Right? But, you know, sometimes I go on like these massive deep dives with my film studies where it's like I've watched 15 fights to just do one study.
Wow.
Because I've gone and watched both fighters' back catalogue of eight or nine fights to then just make sure that, you know, there's something there that is a common theme. I like to sort of highlight some of those things. And, you know, so to put all that together, it's like every night after, and so then I got jiu-jitsu on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Yep. So, you know, 7:30 to say 9 o'clock on those days. And then I come home and then it's basically, you know, my wife's probably gone to bed by then because she's tired. And Tuesday, Thursdays, you know, are sort of my off evenings, so to speak. But, you know, my off evenings, Tuesday I'm usually uploading a podcast.
Yep.
And Thursday, if I can achieve it, my deadline, I try and put up the new film study.
Okay.
So that's sort of like how I've got my week structured. And then weekends are a write-off.
Yep.
Because the kids, family, you know what weekends are like. So it's so difficult to strike that right balance.
Yep.
Right? So, and I guess when you first decided that, hey, you want to start the IT consultancy and obviously do this, it would have been pretty challenging at the start as well, right?
Yeah. Like I've, again, that's probably why I did bouncing for so long, because while I was bouncing, like that was on the weekends, obviously jiu-jitsu at night times, it was only during the day, so I was trying to get it going then. Yep. But just lack of experience, didn't really know how to do it.
Yep.
And you got to learn how to do that. Was it 2015, 16, I was still working in town.
Yep.
So catching the train from, you know, into town every day, coming back, teaching classes at night. It's hard work. I try to work on that was a full-time job, and then trying to also then get clients on the side. So you hear that phrase all the time, like, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. It's the opposite. If you love what you do, you're working non-stop. You know, and because I enjoy computer programming, I just hate the being somewhere at a certain time that robs you of your time. I was coding at night. If I try and get clients, I do the work for them at night. The first client I got, for example, I would organise Skype meetings. This is before Zoom really took off. It was Skype, you know, from my car at lunchtime. You know, I'd go on my lunch break and have a Skype meeting, and then organise meetings at 4:15, knocked off early and stuff like that. So it's just a lot of hard work. You've got to really prioritise your time. And that's something I've learned over time too. There's a great speech from Steve Jobs where he says about focus. It's about saying no. Someone comes with a great idea or they want to do this and that, just say no. If it's not aligned with what you want to do, just say no. And it just stops. So I've got guys here that I know at the gym here that offer to help me out, and they're really great guys. They're really top blokes. Oh, I'll help you. And then they've offered to help 3 or 4 other guys. And they can't help everyone. You know, so saying no and commit to things you can commit to.
Look, and I think it's also about finding things that are in alignment, right? Like, you know, you got obviously these 2 very specific things that you really enjoy, right? I'm well, whether it's semi-fortunate or if it's unfortunate, it's probably more unfortunate that, you know, when you take, you know, automotive out of my life, it's like the only other thing that I'm really passionate about is martial arts. Right, and so that's why, you know, a lot of the things that I'm doing are sort of centric around martial arts. The podcast, obviously, I talk to people from all walks of life. But then, like the other thing sorry, I forgot to add, because the other thing that I'm moving into is fight commentary, like actually commentating live streams and things like that. So I've done a couple of shows, and it's like those shows are typically on a Friday or a Saturday night as well. So it's like then, you know, when you start to look at my week now, it's like, okay, so Monday night when I get home from training, I'm preparing an episode for release on a Tuesday. Right. Tuesday I release the content. Wednesday I'm working on a film study. Thursday I'm trying to release the film study. Friday or Saturday I could be, you know, out.
So just be disciplined with your time. Like just
like for me, I'm trying to find that routine, right? But then, you know, what I haven't encoded into my routine is, okay, what night is the night for the wife?
Yep.
So that's the challenging part for me at the moment that I need to address. So sorry, wife, if you listen to this, but we will work on that together. But yeah, so I guess, you know, one of the other things I want to ask you about is because when you're going out and doing things for yourself, at least for me, like, you know, you go through periods of self-doubt, right?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Ton.
Do you mind, you know, sharing some of those thoughts? And I guess I'll start first, right? So obviously me in this journey right now, it's like that's why I keep reminding myself that it's about body of work, because at times you sit there and you, like, as an example, it could be something simple like you message somebody about trying to organize something, but then they don't get back to you. And then the negative thoughts start to creep in. Oh, maybe they don't think that you're good enough, or it's this or it's that. And, you know, I have to remind myself that it's like, no, the reality is that they're just busy, right? Like it doesn't have to be egocentric that it's anything to do with me. It could be that they're busy with their life, which is fine, right? But those soft doubts, they always attack you, right? Because they're always trying to make you think that, hey, the path that you're trying to forge, you should give up on it, you know? But I guess, you know, what was some of those thoughts that came to you when you were trying to forge this new lifestyle for yourself?
I wouldn't say I had like self-doubts like that. I've always just made up for it with hard work. Like being able to, you know, when there was one year that I had to do jiu-jitsu for money. It was like I lost I had one contract it was a full-time job. I was contracting, and through no fault of my own, the IT manager got sacked, and with that, the contractors kind of got sacked because they didn't want contractors. I just found myself in the middle of it, and jiu-jitsu had to become the job to put food on the table. And I hated it. It wasn't, you know, because I'd never run it as a business to make money. Yep. You know, I've always run it kind of because I started with Gordon, who didn't do it for money, and I've never run it with that mentality of like, you know, gi sales and t-shirt sales, and you got to wear rashies under your gis that have to be our branded rashies. I mean, my guys wear any brand gi they want. It doesn't bother me because it's not about that for me. So, but that year that I needed the money, probably 6-9 months, I really grew to hate jiu-jitsu. And that, it actually, the only time I actually seriously considered closing it down.
Wow. Because
I look at because I had the gym here, my sons were like 1 and 3 or something like that. Yep. Do we just shut it down? And my wife can focus on the kids, and I go back to working full time in town because there was heaps of jobs in town. Yep. One of the best things about COVID for me is
you can work remotely.
Work remotely is now accepted.
Yeah.
That one contract I had before I lost it, it was work remotely. I negotiated to work remotely because of my business. I negotiated that, but once the IT manager left, that situation left. So yeah. Well, the IT jobs were in town. And so what had to happen? I was like, what do I do? So because I still had my security license, I went back to that. And I'm working security again for a few months over a summer. Yep. And then from that, then we decided, my family, my wife and I, okay, I will go back and work in town, and I'll just run this more like a business, and I'll pay coaches to do lunchtimes when I'm not here. I'll pay coaches to do the kids' classes when I'm not here. And that kind of changed, I guess, how I ran the gym. Until then, I was able to, you know, put in and find these new clients, so I could quit working in town again because I just hate doing that. Yeah, as we spoke about before. So yeah, so I like computer programming. I just hate the constraint on my time. Yep. Yeah, and I think that's the real positive aspect when you're doing things for yourself. Yeah. Right, because it's the same for me, like in auto, right? Like you're constrained to the. There's two components to wealth. One's money and one's time. Yep. I've now got my time. Yep. Which is what, I guess, the first thing you want. And then I can focus now on what I love to do, and that will obviously generate more money. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. It makes me think about it's a story, I think I read it on Quora, but it was basically the premise of the story is like there's a Mexican fisherman. Yeah. You know this story, right? Yeah. So for those that don't know this story, essentially the story goes something like there's a Mexican fisherman who's caught these beautiful fish, and the American tourist comes past and he goes, mate, you know, look at these fish, you know. If we caught a few more of those, we could go and sell them. Yeah. And the Mexican fisherman, big business. Yeah, and it's like, oh, but I'm already selling fish. I'm happy doing that. It's like, all I want to do is go fishing. Yep. Yeah. That's it. So, you know, we go and chase all these things thinking that, oh, you know, this is, you know, if we get bigger and bigger and bigger, one day we'll be able to enjoy our money. Yeah. But then at the same time, you've just missed all that life has to offer in the meantime, right? That's right.
So yeah, and that's why, you know, I think there's a certain attraction to be able to finding the right avenues that you can that can keep you happy.
Yeah.
And for me, it resonates when you talk about, you know, when you're doing jiu-jitsu for a job, you start to despise it because it doesn't feel authentic to who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'll give another story. Like going back again, around about that same time.
Yep.
8-9 years ago. I had probably 4 teenagers.
Yep.
And I'm not going to mention their names, but people close to me will know who I'm talking about. But I don't want to make it too public.
Of course.
But basically, I had like a couple of competitors.
Yep.
And 2 kids that I'm not sure what they had, but you could tell that they went with autism or something. I'm not sure.
Yep.
Okay. And these 2 competitors, they go on, obviously in tournaments. I go to the tournaments on the Saturdays and Sundays, coach them, and they'd win. We'd come to training. Obviously, you know, we've got say 10 or 12 kids. They're winning everything. And then, these 2 other kids, one of the mothers would sit up there and she'd be crying. I'd be teaching, and she'd come in the viewers' balcony, not looking happy. Long story short, all 4 of those kids, none of them train with me anymore.
Mm.
And I look back, and now as a father of a son who needs jiu-jitsu, I regret the way I ran those classes.
Okay.
Because the 2 kids that need it the most, I gave the least attention to.
Mm.
And if now I do the same thing. It's like if someone wants to steal my best students who are already doing really well, okay. Because my focus, I would rather give the jiu-jitsu that I have, the knowledge I have, to the kids that need it the most.
Mm.
And that's how I feel now. It's like my focus is now on not competition.
Yep.
It's more now on developing, you know, again, we spoke at the very start, like the self-defense, the learning how to fight, more so than just training for competition.
Yeah. I think there's something beautiful in that.
And I wish I could go back in time and fix that mistake.
Yeah.
Because none of those 4 kids train with me, or the guys that I gave up the weekends when my kids were like really little.
Yep.
They've moved on.
Yep.
And I wish I could get those weekends with my sons back.
Yep.
And I wish I could teach those kids that needed my jiu-jitsu, I could teach them better.
Yep.
And I've learnt from that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a growth to that, right? And I think these are the things that, you know, people don't really think about when it comes to running an academy or a school, right? They think about, okay, what do we need? We need memberships, right? So you think, okay, how do I get more memberships? Well, I need more students, right? And how do you get more students? Well, you try and keep, you know, marketing yourself or finding ways to attract all these new students and things like that. But then it becomes a bit of a churn factory, right? That all you're chasing is new students. What about the ones that you got?
Yeah.
And then, you know, sometimes if it's like, okay, you focus too much on the ones that you got and you don't do anything, you know, for circumstances in life, people might not be able to train for a period of time. Mm. And then if you don't continually feed the funnel at the top, you got nothing left at certain points in the game. You know, one of the things I used to always notice about when people would come to my Kung Fu school where I was training before was that you'd have people that started in, say, a group of, say, 5 friends, right? And of those 5, only 1 would stay. Yeah. Longer term anyway. Yeah. Right? And it would always happen. Like, it would just be like, you know, in a group of friends, there'd only be maybe 1 or 2 that would stay. You know, you'd sign up 5 people at one time, but then you'd only have 1 or 2 that would stay. And so it's like, it's a bit of a numbers game. Yeah,
winter really weeds those people out. We have all this time in summer and it gets to June and then you get the emails that I can't make it to training anymore.
It's cold. Yeah.
I remember like when I first started, I had the 2nd or 3rd year, it was like I lost 1/3 of my members. I'd like say 30 students, lost 10 of them in a month.
Wow.
And I was just couldn't believe. I think I sent this email that was like, you know, if you don't want to commit, then don't start. I was pissed off because I was still competing then. I had this kind of fire. And Larry said, right, it's a gym. You're going to lose members every winter.
Yep.
You know, and he was right. It's people just, it gets dark at 5 o'clock. People don't want to leave home. Yeah. Especially now in the economic climate we're at where everything's so expensive. I mean, we're in a recreation business.
Yep.
A business coach I was watching, he said, you know, the easiest business to run is a food business because you've got to eat. Yeah. And then the second one, easiest, is a clothing business because you've got to wear clothes. Yeah. And the third hardest, this is generalization, is a recreation. Yeah. Because if your money's tight, that's going to go first. Yeah. So things like jiu-jitsu school is a recreation. Yeah. Things that are you can't
on
give
that
up
list.
your food, you can't give up your mortgage and how those kind of things.
Yep.
We'll give up the jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got to just prepare for that. And just
But I also, I think that then comes down to, you know, like people like yourself who are putting your heart and soul into your teaching and things like that. That's what finds you committed people. Yeah. Right. That people can feel that. Hang on one second. My daughter is over there, and she's just like having a.
She's cute. I don't know. Hat.
I don't know what she's doing. She's just standing there.
She want a nap.
Yeah, maybe she wants to have a nap. So, come here. What's wrong? What's wrong? She might be tired.
Yeah, she looks tired.
What we might do, Rod? I think what we should do is we should probably we'll schedule this back up.
Okay.
And we'll do a part 2.
Okay.
Because
sweet.
you know, there's still more things to talk about. But, you know, obviously I think it's the right thing to do with the young one.
Yeah, man.
So
she looks tired.
She does look a bit tired. So I'm going to get her down for a nap, and we'll reschedule to let people hear us talk more about, you know, martial arts and life.
I think she'll fall asleep before you get out of the car park.
We'll see how we go.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll catch up again, and we'll get Rod back on for an episode 2.
Thanks, John.
All right. Cool.